Let me make a general observation. The test of a first rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. One should, for example, be able to see things that are hopeless and yet be determined to make them otherwise. F. Scott Fitzgerald. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's myself, Jeff Black. I got Mr. Robo over there. I got Scoob Jason over there. Got too many Jasons just in versus last podcast this
Too many
time.
J's, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
so someone's getting the last name on this one. But we are against the grain, and today we're going to go over a few Q&As that we kind of have gotten lately, and then we want to go on our take on a couple of the episodes that we had in reflection after kind of chatting in the back and kind of setting up our next quarter of who we're going to bring on. So, but first, we're going to get into our last 7 days. Mr. Scooby, how have they been? What have you done? You were out of the state of Kentucky, weren't you? You
Yes,
were
yeah.
Dallas, right?
I was in Dallas.
I fucking love that city.
It was good. I was in and out pretty quick, but yeah, I was there to speak at a seminar held by Taylor DeHaze. She's a really good business coach for fitness coaches, and I do a little bit with her group on education, and then she invited me to come out and speak. So it was fun. It was good. It was a different take on things. Really good atmosphere. She has a lot of good people that work with her, and I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. So I was Dallas Thursday night and then out Saturday. But that was cool. I had a little sushi while we were there, saw downtown a little bit, but otherwise pretty quick trip. At this point, it's late in the year, and I'm starting to get tripped out. So I could have stayed till Sunday, and I was like, nah, I'd rather just get home and be in my bed and just so we got home. But otherwise, as far as other stuff, got trick-or-treating tonight. Maddox has to go as a bodybuilder. So we got him.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah, we got him like this little costume for kids with like the abs and big old, delts and arms. So he thinks it's pretty funny. I'm still not quite sure if he's laughing with me or at me, but either way.
Maddox is sharp. It's probably laughing.
It's hard to know, right?
Sharp
that'll be fun. So after this, I'm gonna be getting ready to head over and walk around with him trick-or-treating. So family stuff's good. Business stuff is great. Signed a few new clients last week, had a new signing this week. I'm still just staying in my lane, staying positive and helping people the fuck out. That's about it, man.
Nice. Robo, how's your last 7 days been, sir?
Yeah, I think it's actually been 2 weeks.
Since we saw you had a funeral last week.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had a close friend's father pass. So I was up in Indiana more than I planned to be. I've been up there more than I've been back in Tennessee recently. But man, work is insanely busy, which is good. My work is one where if you put in work now, you don't see the fruits of the labor for about 6 months or so, which is great. I don't mind that at all. It means, I should have a really good 2024. And that's it. Just put my head down and grinding for it.
Yeah. I will say I admire how much you work because I know you work like a monster. Your lack of sleep on your tracker shows that. So, no, dude, I don't give a shit about it anymore. I'm like, all right, I've already fucking told you. So,
yeah,
I'm gonna leave you, big boy. Let's see. Last 7 in my world. I supervised this weekend rather successfully the putting together of a shelf for the garage. I felt like I am more masculine than my powers for doing that. I loaded the weapons in the house as I prepare for the doomsday apocalypse that is impending. And I started getting into writing more. Met with Steven, talk about writing my new book that I want to work on. It's an idea about brotherhood. And I kind of working on this thesis that the generation of World War II men if World War III were to break out in this generation, our men would not be a brotherhood like the World War II generation was. Like, why did men in the past couple generations go backwards with helping each other after that generation? Do you know what I mean? It's almost like back then those dudes, strangers, were perfectly willing to die with each other. Now, fuck it, you can do whatever you want and hate anybody however you want, and nobody would line up like that. And I want to flesh this out. So Steven's been helping me flesh it out.
I think it starts with how you're raised, and then too many people have pedestals this day that are fucking unimportant. They can say whatever the fuck they want. So I think it starts there, how you're raised in this goddamn internet,
Well, it brings up a good question. What is a good man anymore? And like that's like something I've been like really thinking about, like in a day and age
Mhm.
of social media that you contend with, which is a completely, for the most part, fabricated, unrealistic world, is what I'm seeing. It's more simulated than anything. And I'm just over here like, all right, tinfoil hat all the way on. But I'm just like, how do you, what defines a good person anymore? Like it's almost like you almost inherently believe everybody's shit unless someone takes out a camera and films them doing a good deed. Like, oh, look, man, I gave that homeless person a bag of food, and like then took a selfie with them kind of shit. I don't know, man. It's just, it's getting me to think a lot about things. And I haven't, it's different when you write a book about yourself. So this is like a whole new project for me. So me fleshing out table of contents and like getting resources and like who I want to interview and how I want to frame it. It's a completely different animal. Probably some of the hardest work I've
I
had.
mean, it could be partly about you if you decide behaviors in the past
I'm gonna write about that
weren't
stuff. Yeah,
uh, where you were being a good man, and then how it differs from now.
true, 100%.
It's such a subjective definition because I can't think, like, do you think someone 50 years ago, the men were generally better than they are now? Or was it just not publicized that they were shitbags too? I
Yeah,
don't
you
know.
don't know,
Yeah.
but it's almost like this though. And I was talking to, so Steven and I were talking, and we were chatting about. It's almost like the emotions that men talk about and display today are vastly different than the emotions displayed in World War II by those men. So you have a generation of silence, nobody said anything, and you have a generation of everybody says too much. And it's kind of like, well, the pendulum swung, right? And this is
Yeah.
my whole thesis, getting my argument out of, because I'm writing a book about making an argument about something, so it's different. I just can't.
A generation of trauma, that trauma generally leads to silence, right?
Right.
You know? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, the greatest generation was silent for a reason. There's a lot of trauma in there.
Yeah, and it's interesting
Yeah.
to like flesh all that out. Like, how did that, and I don't know. I don't know. Did social media make it more of an emotional problem? Did all these other things change it? Did the lack of men in the household change it? There's just a lot of different things I want to know, and I kind of uncovered, and fuck it. I figured why not write about it. So
Yeah. Can I
anyway, go
can I
for it.
give you a look into the future on that book?
Yes.
You're going to upset a lot of people, which is fine, but it'll start conversations at least. But you're going to piss off everyone because everyone has their own idea. Even saying it, I think Scooby and I both had ideas in our head. We're like, actually, we think it's because of this. And then you're talking, I'm like, yeah, I don't even agree with that now. So I can't wait to
A
see where it
hundred
goes.
percent. And that's
Yeah.
why Steven's like really challenging me to work on this thesis and get it really airtight, because he's like, you got to defend it over like 300 to 400 pages, bro. Especially
Yep.
if you're going to use research. He's like, it's a different thing. And I was like, all right, it's going to test me and challenge me, but
I'd say.
yeah, but I still stand by the fact I'm happy I never did mentorships and classes and shit like that, because this has really taught me something, and this is a tangible tool that if I'm 60 and I don't want to coach anymore, I can maybe blog at least and make peasant money off that. So
There's a guy named Daryl Cooper who I think his podcast is called Martyr Made. He's just a normal dude who started a podcast, and it's history focused, but he's super insightful on differences in people, thoughts, relating it, and it probably would be good inspiration for you in some of the ways he thinks as well.
yeah, you'll have to hit me up with that
Yeah.
offline real quick. So, ladies and gentlemen, we had a couple Q&As. We have had kind of some discussion. And I'll tell you what, how we're going to do this is we're going to go into the burnout one first, and then we'll hit the keto one second. We were talking about, we're actually seeing Justin Mahaley in a couple weeks. We're going down to Austin to do some content with him for Grow or Die, etc. It's going to be great. But he was talking about how hard he worked, and we were talking about burnout and all that stuff, and we were reflecting on it. And I can tell you guys, like, and I don't know how you feel,
Yep.
but when you work so much for so long, you almost feel guilty when you get away with working less. Like, there's time where I feel like I'll like watch like Lace be working, and like the kids are at school, and I've got like all this free time I could technically fuck off and do whatever I wanted with. And I almost feel guilty about it, but then I think about to the 11 years I worked 7 days straight and like never took any time off. And then here I am 18 years into it. And at year 17 is when I actually took to 5 days off. So I've steadily gone down, but I can say I get burned out easier the older I am. Like when I was, and I don't know how you guys feel on it, but maybe it's because I could work more intensive than I did in my 20s and 30s, because the work I churn out is way better quality, but it exhausts me more. And I find myself like retreating more and needing more time to myself. And I don't know if it's just a byproduct of gassing it for so long or whatnot, but I dare say that I've been in a perpetual burnout my whole career. when I like really reflected on it, you know what I mean,
Well,
and so forth.
I mean, it's an interesting topic because, you know, we were in Dallas, and Will Webb from Lead Strategy talked about this. And, you know, he had people in the room raise their hand who's experienced burnout. And to my definition of it, I don't know if I've ever truly experienced it. To my definition, it means you don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to do your work, and, you know, you have nothing left to give. I don't feel like I've ever felt that way in my career. So for me, and then, you know, so then his challenge was, well, either you've never taken enough risk, which I don't think is true. I mean, I quit a fucking lawyer job making 6 figures. But when I get up against the wall, I work harder and I work better and I work smarter and I improve. So I don't know that I've ever experienced burnout. But what's your definition? Maybe your definition is just, you know, you need a little time to yourself. And then I've definitely experienced burnout. But if it's, you don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to do your shit, and you just literally spend the whole day doing nothing. I've never done that. I mean, if it's time to work, I'm fucking up and I'm working. And so I don't know, like what's your definition first and foremost?
So for me as a creative person who like I like just really like writing and stuff like that, burnout for me is when I will go weeks on end without ideas, sparks, things like that. There's just no more juice left in the tank. Nothing I want to do is clicking. I don't feel like anything is firing on all cylinders. I just feel all used up. I didn't really ever have that in my 20s. I started getting it some in my 30s, and like, 3-day weekend vacation would clear it up. And then now I just really noticed, like after like taking 4 days off into the mountains, I was like, damn, that was a really good noticeable stretch of the difference of how I came back out of it. Like I mentally was really sharp. I felt renewed. I felt like I had some new thoughts and new ideas. Maybe fuck Jay. Maybe it was because I was in a new location and saw new shit, new people, and it sparked new stuff. I don't know, but I know that suddenly I could start thinking again and writing and so forth. Like
I
nothing
would
was
say
coming to me from my book at all.
I would say what Scooby said is pretty accurate as far as definition in my experience. I think when you hit that wall and it's just you dread every single message notification that pops up on your phone, every email you get, like gives you a feeling of dread. You can't imagine having to get up the next morning when you're going to bed and start work again. It's just overwhelming dread of taking that next step. And I've been there. I think I read an article 2 or 3 years ago that talked about the average age for burnout is 32. And
Yeah.
I'm going off this article, and my assumption is that most of us get in a career, we work our ass off, we try and make as much money as possible for whatever reason, but money's our motivation. There's no real satisfaction from what we're doing, and that can't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I mentioned it in my Haley conversation. Uh, I just bailed on the country. I left my job, said, you know what,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
done. I'm leaving the country. I'm shutting off my phone. I'm shutting off my laptop. I'm not talking to anyone. And I was gone for 30 days. I would have been gone for 6 months, but I had to come back for a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only way for me to bounce back and just rediscover joy, because that's it. You
Have you
can't
had to
find joy
have you had to
in
do that again? I mean, I've never
no.
taken that kind of time in my adult life. You
Yeah.
know,
I
and
mean, that was the last time I ever agreed to
did it.
work for someone. And that
Okay.
was, a big consulting firm where they write
Yep.
you a massive check and then they say, here you go, come work for us. And
Mm-hmm.
then next thing you know, it's 110,
100 hours.
120-hour weeks. Just coming off a really tough time at my
That would burn
job
me out
before that.
100%. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're working 110 hours, there's no time for training. There's no
No.
time for eating right. That would not work with me. That's why I didn't go into the
Yeah.
law field and working for a firm.
Yeah.
I knew what it was. They churn you out, and if you don't make them money within 5 years, and meaning making rain, they get rid of you.
Yeah.
So I never went that route. I didn't care. I was
Yeah.
making less money working for the government, but I could hit the gym at 5 o'clock. And, then I finally found my in-house where they paid me more. But even then I was off by 4.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew that ain't shit. That shit ain't going to fly with me. So
Yeah.
maybe I've just kind of bit my career around things that are passions, but I've never had it. I don't know that I've ever had to do 110 true hours of work in a work week. That's pretty intense. And I could
No,
totally.
I'd wake up, I was on my email, my phone. I'd go to bed, I was on it. But I will share, you hit on what I think the key is, which is you went after your passions. That's what you had. If you don't have those, if you sacrifice those for something else, or that's not your job, and you can't get to those on the side, yeah, you're eventually going to hit it. It's just a matter of time. You can't do it forever. I think we see like real common burnout in a lot of parents these days because they don't get to do anything but work and then do things for their kids. They don't have any me time. They don't have any, chance to pursue anything. They're just zombies. And I mean, I know multiple parents like this. I don't know if you guys do, where you can just tell there's not a lot of joy there. I mean, they're happy to see their kids do well, but they never took care of themselves, so they can't really enjoy it like they should.
Now, at the seminar I was at, Will postulated that maybe part of burnout comes from fear. What do you guys think about that? Like, fear of taking the next step, fear of you took too big of a step. Fear is what he postulated a lot of burnout comes from. What do you guys think?
I mean, I can agree with that. I think that at some point you're probably like, fuck, one more level in Jumanji. Do you really want to take that step from either a tax purpose, a purpose of having to deal with more people you have to answer to, or they have to answer to you? I could actually see that being a reason why.
Yeah,
I don't know if I necessarily agree with fear. I think a lot of it has to do with who you are as a person and what you want to be and what you want to do. No longer marries up with what you're doing daily. So you can say, all right, I'm going to get to the C-suite. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be killer. Then you get there and it sucks and you hate your life. That's going to lead to burnout. That's not fear at that point. It's just you misjudged what would make you happy. You look for something external rather than finding something internal and letting it grow.
So let me ask you, because for our listeners, I think to wrap things up like this, we need to kind of give a little strategy. I know for me, sure, I have times in my past where, if I'm being honest, I probably didn't give 100% to whatever my career was at the time, whether it was something like going on with law or coaching or something. So maybe that's the amount of burnout that I get, where I'm just not giving 100%. But I've never taken a hiatus like you did. And I totally understand why you did it. When you came back, what did you do to prevent that? And did you seek out more of your passions? Like, how do we help people not get to this route?
Yeah. So this is a weird aspect. Jeff knows it, but when I came back, I got offered a job at a major competitor to a firm I worked at before. Went up there, flew up, interview went well. They offered me the job. I had a non-compete invoked,
Okay.
which means they, basically paid me for 11 months not to go work at that firm in the end. And a big portion of that was COVID. And so it was a strange time anyway. So I had plenty of time to write myself. I mean, I lived in the gym with Jeff. I was doing stuff outdoors every day. I was still traveling. So I had plenty of time to write myself. But if I had to do it again, a shorter time frame, the only thing that would have satisfied me, I think, would have been figuring out those passions and going after them. Jeff mentioned I work now a ton, and I do, and I let things fall off. But when things get too bad, we still travel a good amount. I still try and sneak out occasionally and do things that I enjoy. Haven't done it recently, but mountain biking, hiking, things like that. whatever it takes to just get away. And I do not pick up my phone for emails, calls after 7 p.m. And I don't pick it up before 7 a.m. As far as seeing things, I just block those notifications.
Yeah.
Someone contacts me about work, it's a hard no.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a real strategy. I
Yeah.
talked a lot and that's the only one.
Yeah, I think mine are staying in my routine. It's really important. So I think anyone out there who gets in those burnout situations, it's important to stay in your routine. So, I mean, you might not want to move or get off the couch, but no matter what, like I always get to the gym. For me, I enjoy it. Some people have to drag themselves there. That's something I enjoy. So daily I can go to the gym and say, I truly enjoy this and I'm cool with spending this 2 hours that way. I think whatever that is for those people, they need to take that 2 hours. And I take that midday. So I get up at 6, I work till noon ish, maybe sometimes 1, go to the gym, come back, and then start round 2 of work. I'm usually done by 7:30. And then I set my phone aside like you. It stays over by the counter. I'm on the couch, usually chilling, and I don't touch it unless someone's in peak week. So I've got boundaries that I draw, and I think that helps you a lot. I kind of stay in my lane on socials. I have a few accounts I follow, but otherwise I'm not going down rabbit holes and worrying about what other people are saying. And I think that's important too. So routine for me is probably the biggest one that allows me to prevent it. And then, of course, I've always pursued passions over direct money. I've always felt like if I go after the shit that I am really good at and there's a service need for it, the money will come. So
I think, and sorry, Jeff, I definitely want you to say something in a second, but Scooby hit on something that I wanted to build on, which is you look at that time aspect going after the passions. I think too often people trade, money for time. And when you start, finding a way to work for yourself where you're not a salary, where you're not afraid of losing your job, or even if you're working that salary, you can at least make the justification that, all right, at this point, I realize time is more valuable than money. So I'm going to take this time, even if it loses me, a small commission check, or I miss out on this small opportunity, because this time is more important than that $200 I might have made out of this, or that 300. I need this more.
Yeah.
As I sit here and I hear all that, I think that's a good idea. I don't think you necessarily have to take a vacation and get away. I think, sometimes it's nice to just go somewhere different because it gives you just a break. But, whenever I went through burnout, I will say I really believe psychedelics helped me in the microdosing fashion form, because it helped me just break through thinking or things like that. Because I remember, like, when Jay and I were talking, I was on that trip and some stuff was going on and I'd microdosed. And I just remember sitting there in nature and just having these like deep thoughts about like how we are as a species, how we act towards each other, like all this like deep stuff. And just kind of like realizing like, man, at the end of the day, like I'm fucking dying along with all these other motherfuckers. And I don't really give a shit what anyone thinks or says. Like, you know what I mean? It just was really profound, but it got me to start thinking. And I thought back to other times where, I talked about in my book, my mental health stuff, and you guys read it, so you all know. But I do think that maybe that was some burnout tied into that mental health stuff I was going to. And I think that the psychedelics kind of helped me unwind all that, because I was just kind of able to sit with things, but not get attached to them emotionally like I was before. Or if I did, it provoked the question of, well, why am I attached to that, rather than like full on switch of the emotion, like I think it was Tony Robbins. He talks about that. What unlimited power, isn't that right, Robo? Where if you can control your emotional state and all these different things to do with NLP and how you can kind of go down that route. But yeah, it was, I don't know. That was something I would recommend. And then float tanks is a big one. I think if you just need to kind of get a break away and you're needing like little recharge moments to maybe prevent burnout, float tanks, maybe a day you go for a walk out, do a hike, just something where you just totally unplug, like Robo says, maybe one day a month for some people. But I do think there's importance to it. Like if I could go back, like if Keegan decided to go down the road of being like, Dad, I want to run Iron House and be a coach too, I'd be like, all right, buddy, well, here's some framework to work off of. And I know you're going to want to work all these hours, but spend all those hours like reading books and developing more, rather than just so much into your craft, because you're going to have a long time to really refine it. So I would probably tell them to go a little bit slower. But dude, that was what Will said is very thought provoking. I heard something today. curious what you guys think. We'll move on to the next topic. That an argument for men, because more men over 60 are killing themselves now, and it has to do with like our pack life response, something to do with the fact like as we get older, men die and the group slowly just falls apart and disintegrates. So men become lonely, where women will keep like finding new groups of people and keep going. And I was like, that actually does make sense. Like, I know with our guy group, it is real hard to get every guy to show up every time. There's like some dudes always giving it like at least one every time is always like, yo, work or da 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 da. Like, it's real hard. Like, you will put your male friendships to the side and like friendships to the side to handle work or handle your at home responsibilities.
I'm guilty of that.
But they're just as important, Like, I can say, like, I had a good time when Robo and I hung out with the guys a couple weeks ago for a few hours. Just, had a few beers and just chatted, and it was a good night. And like, I had laughed a lot, you know what I mean? And that's hard to do anymore. So,
I mean, I think you're right. I didn't know that statistic. More men over 60 and then ever were committing suicide. I had no idea. I've watched my mom. My dad's now in a home, and dementia is pretty much full blown, and she's on her own for the first time since 19. But I mean, she's made a lot of friends. Like, she knows all her neighbors. They take her out to dinner. She'll go out to dinner with her neighbor who has a husband. Like, they just bring her along. She's really expanded her friend group way more than it was than when she was married. So I do think there is something to that. I definitely could see where my dad, I'm not really sure if he really had many friends left. And, I think I'm guilty of that sometimes. I don't know that I keep up my friendships as well as I should. So I can see that. I can see after 60, especially if you're more of a loner where that comes. But we are pack animals. So like, if you're alone all the time, that's not going to be healthy for your mental or anything.
I think I read this, and if someone disproves me, I won't feel terrible. So I'm going to caveat it that people do tend to live longer who have stronger relationships and close friends. It's just it's clearly important to your health. So it absolutely makes sense. As we've gotten older, I think we probably whittled down friend groups. 100%. At least that's how I feel. Yeah, you just
mine are whittled way down. Yeah.
And so many of your friends when you're younger are drinking buddies. And then once you realize, all right, that's not an actual friend, because if we're not drinking, I can't stand this person. Yeah.
Oh, that is
and
true.
So those who are left hopefully are much stronger ones, and you talk to them once every 3 months, but it's strong. You're right. None of us really keep up on that like we should.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. It's like I'm the organizer of them. Like, Robo and I will kind of talk about a spot, and then I'll put it in the thread. Two dates, majority wins the date. Like, we're planning a bar golf thing, which, Jay, if you want to come down and partake in the shit show, you can. But it's basically like there's going to be 9 bars, and every bar's got a par. And like water hazards. We're getting driven home by someone else, obviously, by the end of this. Yeah. But our friend Joey, who's our premier Miller Lite friend in the group, who literally can drink tons of booze and never get drunk, is planning this. So it'll be a fun event.
What weekend, do you know?
We're looking at January. It'll be before the seminar.
Okay. Well, let me know. See if I don't have Maddox that weekend.
I will let you know.
Maybe a weekday. That was the rumor, right?
No, I thought we were looking at Saturday afternoon because we said we could get away with it.
Oh, see, we don't even agree on the timing.
All right.
We still got some details.
Jay, when we get it done, we'll let you know so you can plan with enough time or something.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, let's get in the next one. So this is on the keto one. And Jay and I have talked about this before, but today I posted a before and after of a person I was talking about my different nutrition strategies I use. And one I utilize is keto, and that's just mixing it up. I get a lot of clients who they've been doing carb cycles for a while, haven't had any responses. Their body gets where they're Dr. Pompa talks about in his book, Beyond Fasting. It's talking about you're basically a sugar burner. And all you're doing is just burning sugar, you're not burning fat. So when you move over to keto for a little bit, it's kind of resetting your mitochondria, it's getting your, which is the powerhouse of your cells, getting it where it's burning fat again. I did it for my show. I talked about it. Jay was prepping me and I stopped responding. I said, well, let's go into keto. And I did. I started moving again. And it's to get your body to use fat as fuel is primarily focus because you have two fuel sources your body can run off. Now I know Jay has a different level to it because the stuff it gets labeled weight loss resistance or it gets hit with the impossible plateau, whatever marketing coin you want to throw at it. It's still people are having a hard as fuck time losing weight, and you got to figure out why. And diet variability is a big topic, and that's where you're basically throwing keto in there, different fasting approaches. I know Jay sees different people with this than I do. He tends to get a different type of weight loss resistance. I think there is different types. I think you can have like your gym pop people like I do, who've done a lot of yo-yo dieting, but not a lot of true strength training and not a lot of like dieting with a like actual history of consistency for a long time. A lot of start and stoppers. So keto is something I have used, and then I use like a cyclic approach to it for a few weeks, and I put them back into carbs, and boom, they start moving. And it's just something you could do. And plus, it teaches people how to not be afraid of food. They have like food choices. Like I like the clients who will be like, it's nice, I can travel, and I'm in an airport, and I just know I need to get like a protein drink and like one of those like fatty kind bars or something like that, and that's a meal until I get to where I need to. And understanding how food really works for you has been something that a lot of my clients thank me for. So that's kind of my approach to it. I think I utilize it depending upon diet history and depending upon the progress. Like if they're stuck going up and they're stuck going down, well, shit, I'm going to talk to them about keto and be like, why don't we try it? You got nothing to lose. And it's very important to do healthy fats with the keto. I think Jason could talk about that a little bit, in terms of like your cell membrane and how it helps and make it more healthy, which, helps obviously with hormone signaling and all that. But that's why I use it. Just people who are stuck and who kind of need a different way to look at things and a new, fresh approach. And man, nothing's fucking dogmatic. I've been doing this for 18 years. Jay's been doing this just as long as I have, and we've seen this shit come and go and come and go and come and go. And it's just an approach. And whatever your client needs, you give them. I know Robo has some experience with keto. He could probably talk on because I threw him in it. But Jay, real quick, go into your stuff with it. That's kind of mine. I use it with gym pop people who maybe they have one idea of keto, where it's like I go to Chipotle and I eat all the meat and cheese, and I'm like, no, it's not like that, and I have to explain it to them. So, I put together a keto guide for all my clients, so that way they kind of have like ideas about the base rules to it and stuff like that. But I'm curious for your take on it for everybody else, as you see kind of a different clientele than I do.
Yeah, I mean, anymore, I have a lot of gym pop soccer moms, to be honest with you.
You're getting those soccer moms, huh?
I help just as many.
Talk to them about their minivans and shit. Or you like drive like a Dodge Durango, like SRT?
Right. I do get a lot of professionals too. I have like probably 4 or 5 female attorneys right now, stressful life, mergers and acquisitions type stuff, things like that. But I mean, I think it's just important to realize keto is a tool. Yeah. I don't think it's a something that I would tell someone to use year round in terms of trying to be fat adapted all year round. But it is a tool. And like Jeff said, it works really well in these weight loss resistant cases. And, you're going to see fucking people semantics. They're going to say there's no such thing as weight loss resistance. Well, yeah, there's no medical fucking diagnosis. Then I can call it fat loss resistance, or I can say you can't fucking lose weight. But tell a woman there's no such thing as weight loss resistance who's dealing with it, they're going to tell you to fuck off. So it really gets me annoyed when people start wanting to beat fancy with semantics. They can't lose fucking weight. Done. Like that's what's going on. And it really does work because diet variety is very important. But I think there's some other nuts and bolts to kind of just go in with. When I do it, and I'm sure Jeff, I lower protein big time. So a lot of people, right? What's that?
You do about 25% of the number.
20,
25,
like that.
Somewhere there.
So, when people are pushing protein higher, and a lot of my people that come to me, they've been stuck in diet culture, so they've heard high protein. And that's really good. It pushes mTOR pathways, which helps you build muscle. It can stave off sarcopenia and keep you younger so you're not losing muscle. Losing muscle is the fastest thing that ages people, right? And so, but if you're constantly pushing that pathway, the body can get inflamed. Read up on inflammation, mTOR pathways, all these things. And you can see that if you're constantly trying to build muscle and pushing this protein high, you can get bogged down and get inflamed. So keto is a great way to create diet variety right away, because to do it right, you have to have low protein. Why? Because if you go high protein with it, you're not going to get into fat adapted. And that's the whole point. Jeff said you want to teach the body to use fat again as a fuel source. Well, if your protein's high, you're going to convert it into carbs called gluconeogenesis. Your body's smarter than you are. So you got to go low protein. So now we've just turned things on its head where you're normally higher protein. Now it's low. You're getting the carbs out of there so we can help retool insulin sensitivity because there's usually a blood sugar dysregulation going on. And then we use anti-inflammatory fats like extra virgin olive oil, macadamia nut oil, avocado,
MCT,
free range hens that, you
Dude,
know,
heavy whipping cream.
I don't like heavy whipping cream because of the omega-6s. That's a trans fat.
Oh man.
I like it for someone who doesn't have these problems.
Yeah.
Keto. When I go keto, I put it in, but I don't do it with my clients because of the trans fats. That's
no, it depends upon the client. You're correct. If some people are just trying to do keto, you can get
so if you're just trying to do keto and you're healthy and no issues to use it more in that way, sure. Heavy whipping cream in a shake is fucking delicious. So, you know, that's one of the things that you can use, and then you can incorporate intermittent fasting. You can incorporate even fast mimicking days with it, which are lower calorie days. Walter Longo talks about that in his book, The Longevity Diet. It's called.
Hey, real quick, let's talk about the autophagy thing. So the reason you fast is for autophagy, which your body is clearing out its cells. Right. We actually have a really good speaker, Ben Azita, will talk about it from the keto camp. He was on. He's coming to present the seminar we're talking about, but why, Jason, is it important to like do the fasting? Because I tell people this, like I work up fasting windows. I think I shared with you how I do it over 7 days. Like I bump them up slowly over time and get them used to it. But the whole purpose of it is to basically shut the immune system off. And along with a couple other things like lower inflammation and things like that. So get into some of that a little bit.
Definitely lowers inflammation. But you know, when you push down getting fat adapted, keto diet, being fat adapted is one way to retool your autophagy. Everyone's body does it. So it's not like you're not doing it at all anymore, but the process can get bogged down and slowed down, especially when inflammation is high in the body. And all autophagy is it's like you said, it's cell cleaning. It's metabolizing old cells. They're called senescent cells or zombie cells. And the thing with these they don't really die off, but they're no longer switching over to fat burning. They're not as healthy. And there's hormone receptors on every cell. And so if they're not healthy, now your hormones aren't talking as well. So by going into a bit of ketosis, you're just pushing your autophagy pathways more is all you're doing. You're getting out the old and bringing in the new.
Yep.
That's why they talk about how, you know, really, if you want to be like real healthy, go lower calories at least once a year, switch into keto at least once a year. That's going to push those autophagy pathways. And so sometimes when people have done nothing but push mTOR, train, eat a lot of protein, this inflammation builds, and that's going to bog down some of the cells there. So we can kind of get that process just kind of cranked up a little bit. You may need it, you may not. You might go into ketosis and not need any, you know, low calorie or fasting or intermittent fasting, but you might to push it a little harder. So, you know, I think it's easiest for people to understand. It helps with inflammation. When you start talking autophagy, people starts getting bogged down with it. But I mean, that is one of the reasons that you would adapt into a keto fat adapted lifestyle for a bit. It'll help there. So
yeah, I actually have seen this, and I was going to get your take on where people like the first pass putting them in keto when they're monitoring their blood, and you use the glucose, the ketone, GTI, GTK monitors or the formula, and then you're using like keto since tested with the blood, where people like won't go into keto like the first pass. Almost like you have to pull them out. Like I've had people like go in it for 8 weeks, not really get into keto by what their blood's showing, right? Never really have too many keto symptoms. I tinker it up and down. Then I put it back into carbs, and then 4 weeks later, I'll put them back into keto, and suddenly it's like everything turned off. It's the wildest thing. I was curious. Have you seen that yet? I've seen that like 2 people I've done it with, where the moment I pulled them out, a few weeks later, we went back for it because they really wanted to try it again. So I don't know, maybe if they were doing something they should not have done in the back end, want to give it a fair go, but nonetheless, the second time they ripped right through it. So I was curious.
I mean, I've never really necessarily seen that. I've seen where it takes, the more unhealthy someone is, the longer it's going to take to get fat adapted because their body is not used to burning fat as a fuel. So I've seen people take 14 days. Like they don't get any fucking carbs, they don't get a refeed. The more efficient your body is, the quicker you'll switch over. When we had Benazidi on, I said, well, man, I can run into a keto diet and I feel good pretty much the first day. I don't ever get keto flu. I have great energy, good mind. He's like, yeah, because you're metabolically efficient. You have flexibility. So the longer it takes to get in, usually for me, that just means it just shows me how much more they really need it. The quicker you can get in, the more metabolically healthy you are. So it's possible those people just weren't willing to stick it out. They felt so bad. You put them off, put them back into carbs and then go back at it. And their mind's a little bit more active on it. I don't know, but I've never really seen it. I just make people stick it out. But also like with the blood, monitoring the blood with like a Keto Mojo or something. If you don't get that from the beginning and they're already in ketosis, you're not going to have high ketones because they're burning them now.
Yeah, they're burning ketosis.
You're only going to see it for a few days where they're up at 2s or whatever, you know. Otherwise, you're going to see 0.5s and 1s, and it's like, oh, they're in moderate kind of ketosis. Well, they might be in full ketosis, but they're burning those ketones, so it's always driving that number down. So, you know, I've seen people grab those late in the process, and they're like, yeah, I'm at 0.5 or 1. I'm like, well, your energy's pegged at 10, so I think you're good. Yeah, no, I feel great. I was like, yeah, you know, it's because we didn't catch it right away as you were switching over.
Yeah, I was reading, they said it's like 0.2 on the monitor is technically good enough for ketosis. 0.3 is optimal. So if you're running 0.5, you're definitely in ketosis. So yeah.
It depends what monitors you're using.
Yeah, on that Keto Mojo one.
Keto Mojo, maybe I'm wrong, but I understood it to be 0.5 and 1, and then up to 2 is like where you're strong ketosis.
Yeah, no, you're correct. But like they were saying, like when you're in 0.3, it's like you're starting to get into it, like you're in ketosis, and the higher that number goes, the more you go.
Correct.
So anyway, Robo, you got anything you want to chime on that, man?
No, I mean, I tried it. I did it for what, 5-6 weeks, something like that. It was the easiest time ever to do meal planning. It was so simple. I love that aspect. Carbs are the bane of my existence. I hate eating tons of carbs every day. So it was great. And I feel like it did heal some issues that were lingering that had been for a while.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting how they do the fat adapted racing, like those endurance racers and stuff like that. When I really got into reading about keto, a lot of those racers will like race on like 300 grams of fat.
Well, the guys who climb Everest, the Sherpas, eat ghee, like literally sticks of butter. That is their fuel. That's what they've done forever. That's, you know, their history.
Wow. Damn. There's a couple other things I use it for, guys. Obviously, resetting insulin sensitivity on someone who's really got issues. And what I mean by that is really high A1Cs. Like your A1C is like a 5.5. I can probably get you in a deficit and keep carbs in as long as you're in a deficit and you're going to reset. Your insulin sensitivity is 5.8, 5.9, or your A1C 5.8, 5.9 on the 6s, pretty much pre to basically diabetic type 2. Usually I use ketosis at some point. Another thing is if I had someone who did have whatever you want to call it, let's just call it weight loss resistance. And I helped them kind of get rid of that blood sugar dysregulation. As I bring them out and I get carbs in on training, I'll still leave keto on off days to reset things so they never get back to that point where there's dysregulation. So I'll leave keto in. I'm not expecting them to get into ketosis. That's not what it's doing. It's just giving them a day where they're already used to a diet like keto, and they're not getting bombarded with carbs that day. So those protein days can go higher if I want, because I'm not expecting ketosis, so I don't need that low protein. But I use it on rest days a lot, especially with people that have had dysregulation. So I have a guy who had like metabolic syndrome. He had fatty liver disease. I definitely had to use some ketosis. On his rest days are ketogenic, and then his training days is where I push his carbs, and his CGM is always pretty solid now. So there's tools and there's ways to work it and use it. I don't recommend it as your diet year round. It can downregulate thyroid. And
throw the carb days in there occasionally.
Yeah. So that's covering most of the things that I use it for.
Yeah. And, you know, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either of us. Like Jay said, it's a really good tool. And if the client's open to it and you can kind of explain what's needed for them, it can really help make your coaching process a lot smoother in terms of the results your clients get. I haven't had one client who's actually gone through keto and successfully done keto who hasn't asked to go back into it just because they like how they feel. So there's good perks to it. So like Jay said, not year round, maybe 12 weeks a year, and then kind of figure it out from there. And you could go keto on those off days. I know when I was pushing my GH real high, Jay had me on keto days on my off days.
Yep.
So that way my blood sugar wasn't
exactly. That's a great example right there. It's just to preserve that insulin sensitivity.
Correct, 100%. The next one, I actually got this one. This was about Cade, and then Robo. We'll wrap up with yours about hormones real quick. Jay, this one was directed, I think, more to you and I. Robo, I'd be curious if you had a random general take, but someone once said in the Cade episode we didn't really cover fat loss supplements much and things like that from a pro bodybuilding standpoint. And my reply was more of, I know Cade really well, and he's coming back on our podcast. Him and Jordan Hutchison are going to come on together. So I'm going to make that happen for us. But I would dare say it was your basic clean T3 GH. And maybe like a green tea extract, and that's it. Really,
I would throw L-carn in there for sure.
I don't think he was using L-carn from what I remember.
Oh, him. I'm saying in general.
Yeah, no. So, and that was where I was going to go with this. Like, I think when you get into the fat burning subs, you're going to have guys who use different things. Like me, for example, I don't touch Clean or T3. I use Thyro Boost. I abuse that product. Jason laughs about it. But it works really well for getting me to lose fat and get my thyroid going. And I use injectable L-carnitine and Semiohemby. And that's all I really need to kind of get peeled out. I think other people like different things. Like some guys like ephedrine because of the energy. Some guys like clean because of the energy. You got DMP. I've never fucked with DMP. I don't know if Jason knows anybody who has or hasn't. That has never been a fat burner of my choice. I know some people take Adderall during prep because it crushes their appetite and things like that.
I've tried that. I've tried that for my nationals prep way back in 2013.
How miserable were you on that? I bet you're an asshole of an asshole.
You know
all that
what?
meth in your system, I bet you were like chewing through wood.
You know what? I don't remember if I was an asshole. It's quite possible. But what I do remember is how much I loved fucking cardio. I was up to an hour a day, dude. And I remember one morning, I got up, took that Adderall, had my clean. That's probably all
you did both together. Could you even write your signature on a check?
I know I wasn't jittery at all because I'd already probably been on clean for a while. So like I wasn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't doing shit probably. I wasn't at least as far as like, jitters. But I got on that damn we had an elliptical in the basement and we had kind of a movie room. And I threw on like pumping iron and I was doing my cardio. And my wife at the time comes down and goes, you got to get to work. And I was on that thing for an hour and a half. Like every step just felt really cool. And I was super in the groove where every other morning, I'm like, fuck, it's been enough time. And I look at it, it's been like 20 minutes. That morning, like I didn't even care how long I was on it. I was just so in the zone. I also remember I was drier on it, had a drier look. And I do remember it helped with hunger. For sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. I heard a lot of guys are using it for hunger. And then I see a lot of people on the boards now talk about semaglutide being utilized in prep. And I think that you could probably use that if you're going through extreme dieting, then that's a tool. Jake can talk about that if he wants. But I think if you're going to find fat loss protocols, I think everyone has like your typical favorites you see. And I haven't seen anything really crazy out there in the last few years. DMP's been the only new one, which I don't know anything about. Other than as an explosive, and it just sounds weird.
I don't know much about it either.
I'd take a bunch of cocaine probably before I take DMP, and someone on the internet's going to say you're fucking stupid. It's so safe, and I'm going to be like, cool. Well, I'm just telling you, like I put shit up my nose before and I didn't mind it, so I do it again. So I'm not going to lie about like George W. did. Robo, do you have any questions on that from like a random person, like who just hears about the fat burning supplements in the world and all that shit. And then you hear us, it's like, oh yeah, they work, but you got to be XYZ and these things work better than others.
Kind of yes and no. The question is more so, you guys obviously know Andrew Huberman because everyone quotes him as though it's gospel. Andrew Huberman did a podcast that Rick Rubin hosted with a guy named Dr. Jack Cruz, which dude is very intelligent, at least came across that way. Both are neurologists. The difference is Jack Kruse went and studied physics as well as neurology to kind of understand the impact. And one of the things that they were debating is different supplements. And Dr. Jack kept saying that like taking some supplements, might be okay. A lot of them are just too much. One of which he specifically called out was even vitamin D, saying that folks who take vitamin D long term, it actually inhibits your ability to absorb sunlight well. It inhibits your ability to convert that sunlight into the nutrients it needs in your body.
Yeah, but what if you're not getting out in the sun?
Then are you going to take something that's going to make it worse when you can get back to the sun?
So
Like, that's the question. I don't know.
So I read a whole book about it. A guy took up to 100,000 IUs of vitamin D a day before he noticed any ill effect. And he did that for months on end. Now he had blood work to show it. I can say this because people have passive aggressive on social media. But vitamin D, I have to take it in order for my blood to be different. There's all these different vitamin D blood markers you could get. I know there's this like rabbit hole, but I can be in the year 2 years ago, 2 summers ago. Remember, I did all the steps. Jay knows that, and you know that. I was out in the sun all the time. I was tanned. I was sunroof, or my Jeep top was always off. Jay saw my blood work and my vitamin D was 28, which is low. He's like, we were both like, what the fuck, dude? I was like, what the hell? Like, and here I was in the sun. I had a diet of vitamin A because I was eating the eggs with the retinol. Like, you know what I mean? I remember the specifics, and I'm like, it still didn't translate well. So, and I would be curious to see what the research is like. And then what's the research among genetic variety, and then those who are well trained versus non-trained.
So before that point, did you take a lot of vitamin D as well?
No.
In the past?
I've every time I've taken it, my blood work has been good. I stopped taking it because I was like, well, I'm in the sun and and I had the rationale to it, dude. I was out in the sun 90 minutes a day. I had a beautiful tan. I mean, I looked beautiful, like Enrique Iglesias.
So for those of us who aren't, inclined towards knowing these different supplements, the benefits, you hear something like this, and then you get recommended 3,000 different things, some weird route from the Himalayan mountains to help your sore knee. And it's just, at what point is this crap too much? Like, at what point are we not doing anyone any favors, and we just pull it all back and say, hey, here are 2 or 3. And I know personally, right, wrong, or indifferent, I only take things now that would have been found in our food, our soil in the past, water supplies. I'm really not taking anything outside of that, aside from something like creatine, which, is basic, everyone takes. But there's just a fear of, at what point is it too much and I'm overloading my body and hurting it in some way?
Well, I mean, I think there's an easy answer to this.
Yeah.
If you don't need it, don't take it. If you take labs and your vitamin D 60 to 80, why would you take, why add vitamin D? If you take labs and your iron's in a good range, why would you add iron? So I don't know what other coaches do, but I mean, I look at labs, and if there's some issues, I try to fill in the gaps, work on lifestyle habits and see if they come up. Not every time do things improve. So maybe you need certain areas filled in. But I can tell you this, I've seen people come to me that were on 30 bottles of different things and their liver enzymes were elevated. Yeah. So there is truth to it. I mean, when you talk about, a good analogy is water. We as humans can't live without it, but if you drink 4 gallons a day, you might die. So, too much of anything is problematic. So your liver has to digest or filter all that. So I think if there's not a need for whatever you're doing, why take it?
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think you play with it. I think when it comes to bodybuilding, I know with me being enhanced, I think Jay can relate to this. I'm going to err on the side when I'm pushing gear. I'm probably going to take more shit. And then when I'm probably in my cruise phases, I'm probably not taking as much. Like
I like to see labs, and a lot of my guys will just give me labs when they're at least on, TRT, or maybe even, on a cycle, and then fill in the gaps. I mean, if they have high liver enzymes, okay, then we probably need a liver product while you're on. If your kidneys look spectacular, why would we take astragalus or any of these other kidney products? I know coaches that are like, okay, it's cycle time. You need a kidney, you need a liver, you need this, you need that. Well, do you? I don't know. Like, let's take a look at labs and see where you're at. If your kidneys are looking fucking spectacular, why would I throw a kidney product in you that now they got a filter? So I look at everything kind of from a need standpoint.
I mean, society right now is here's a pill to fix that. Here's a pill to fix that. And so it almost feels like what you said is some coaches have fallen into that habit where here's the easy fix rather than, all right, let's take a holistic view.
No, it's a thing of fear.
Yeah.
It goes back to the shit of the weight loss resistance, fear of people being suckered again in the fitness industry. Don't buy it. It's the fear of like the supplements. This could work, this could work, this could hurt you, this couldn't hurt you. It's the fear of steroids now. Like Jay and I grew up in the era of show us the body bags was the motto that used to be on the boards. Like there's no body bags related to bodybuilding and steroids. Fuck it, just inject like 3 grams. And then body bags started showing up. So then it became, well, fuck it, you got to take a gram of turmeric a day, this much astragalus, da 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 da. And it became like just doctrine, you know. And there's, like Jay says, there's a happy in between to it. I just know on my labs over time what I need and what I don't need. And I know when I'm on cycle, I buff those up. When I'm off cycle, I just keep them for general health. Last point, Robo, you had something about hormones. You were saying from the hormone episode we did with Dr. Kerry Jones.
Yeah. I think it was
point?
more the supplement question and how it influenced overall, just the body. I'd say we covered it overall. I'd be interested though from that episode, what you guys look for. So she talked about kind of the toxic overload or overload. That's the word I'm looking for in the body. Are there specific markers, specific things you look for that lead to that? Or is that something more reading between the lines? You start to see and address it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I would look at inflammatory markers for sure if we're talking toxic overload. So your CRP is going to show systemic inflammation. Anything over 3, there's some inflammation going on. And, you know, cortisol, if it's running high, there's going to be inflammation. So you could take a look at that. But other inflammatory markers are like high iron in the presence of not taking iron, or vitamin C, because vitamin C will increase it. So iron raising on its own is a form of inflammation. LDH is a marker that shows like hormonal damage and stress. So if that's up, that can show more of a toxic overload, which to me is like just an inflammation in the body. The more gear and the more food you push for a bodybuilder, the more I talk about the word toxicity. So liver, if liver enzymes are off and elevated, inflammation, toxic overload, however you want to coin it, those I'd be looking at liver. Even kidneys take on some stress if there's toxicity going on. So you can look at all those markers. Homocysteine, the higher that is, the more likely you are to plaque your arteries if there's a lot of inflammation in the body. And
what was the first one you said again?
CRP, C-reactive
protein.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if that one's high, anything over 3, you have a likelihood of a higher cardiovascular risk because of the inflammation in your body is going to speed up plaquing of the arteries. So that's a big major one. And so like you use the word toxic overload, to me, that's inflammation, same thing. But I see that one raise a lot in bodybuilders who come to me taking a lot of gear and pushing food out the ass and they don't feel good. And a lot of times that CRP is going to be high, and you can literally fix it by coming down to a 150 mg cruise dose, pulling their food way back and just getting healthy. But that would show toxicity to me.
So to answer your point, and I'll go in a different direction because Jay covered that one really well on all points. In Pompa's book, to go back to him and Beyond Fasting, he talks about when you experience weight loss resistance, because he talks about weight loss resistance. That's his term that he uses when he describes this phenomenon Jay and I were discussing. And he says that when people are toxic overloaded, outside any other absence, it would be a sign that if they're not losing weight, that they're toxic overloaded. And I can say this, I think it's good for everybody to do infrared saunas. And I tell all my clients, like you've seen emails, I've included research about it, like, hey, you should do this, da 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 da. But Jay covered all the blood work stuff. Outside of that, I just tell everybody, like, hey, unless you're filtering your air in your home, unless you're filtering your water, unless you're driving with a super duper mask in your car that filters out, you know what I mean? What goes up in the air must come down, all these things. Assume you have a little bit of a toxic load. And that's just the consequence of modern living. So I think that sweating does good. I mean, you have a whole generation of of women in their 60s that don't like to sweat. And a lot of them still want to lose weight. I'm like, well, you got to get sweating. You know what I mean? You got to kind of get healthy and things like that. So,
Jeff, I see people like that in the afternoons at Iron House. All right.
Well, why do you think I
They
keep
don't
the
want to
temperature
sweat.
at 78, baby? I don't allow that shit to go down anymore. I'm
They
like,
just,
no, no,
their
no.
form, they just go that far, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, guys, that was a good one for covering it. I did that answer everything, Robo, that you're looking for? That I think.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
yeah.
was just out of
At
my
some
place.
point, I'd love for one of us to test some of those infrared blankets or things that you can lay on that are, and see if those even have an impact. Because you're not
Oh.
really sweating, but I'm curious.
I bought that infrared sauna, and that, of course, you sweat with
Yeah.
that. But I can tell you
Yeah.
that that is a game changer for me, in terms of just how I feel, like my body.
Yeah.
Like there is a remarkable difference for about 3 or 4 days after I use one.
Did you get the cold plunge with it yet?
No, I don't like fucking cold plunging. I do it.
I have the cold plunge in my
He has the cold
garage.
plunge.
Big old
Yeah.
barrel that I hop in.
I
Yeah.
turn the fucking water faucet to cold as shit when I'm leaving or like getting ready to get out of the shower for like the last minute or two, depending upon my mood for the day. And that's kind of how I do my cold.
You know, that's not the same though, right?
Yeah, man, I'm terribly efficient in a lot of things in life. I'm learning. Most of all, cold plunging.
I'm just saying it really stands out for me.
I'm just giving you shit.
Combine it with the sauna and it's like a 1-2 punch. I don't like it either, and I don't have one. I'm just saying, like, you're gonna go that sauna, you might as well have the cold plunge, and it's a 1-2 punch of inflammation and all the things we're talking about. So that's all.
I don't know if Keegan would appreciate me infringing upon his workout area now that he's built out for himself. Homie likes to go for like
really?
a quarter of my gym for his weight set.
Don't you have like an addition on the back of your house where you could put a cold plunge in there?
I could put
No,
stuff
the
like
hot
that.
tub takes up the space.
I have a hot
yeah.
tub, and I'm actually looking at like putting more gravel down my backyard for cornhole and
Gotcha.
having like guy night once a month, like cornhole poker tournaments at the house.
Cool.
So anyway, guys, that was a good one. People, if you got any questions, try to ask us. We don't mind filtering them. That was just some of the stuff we've had over the last few weeks. So
Yep.
in the future, if y'all need anything, hit us up. I hope you guys have yourself a good day. See ya.
See ya.